Our next story comes from Maire McGrath. Maire, we're delighted to have your story, and you're very welcome.
Thank you, thank you. So, do you know what? I'm going to come clean with you all right from the start. You see, I absolutely detest Christmas. But why, you cry? So many reasons. I think it's more or less manufactured bonhomie, or, you know, that sense of pressure, that sense of duty, expectation that everybody has to get with the program. You see people you don't want to see, get presents you don't want to give, etc., etc. However, there is one thing which I absolutely love about Christmas, and that is that we are always encouraged to do good for others. However, not all good deeds for others are appreciated. In fact, it can actually be quite the opposite, as I unwittingly discovered one Christmas, because this is a cautionary festive tale. But I'll come back to that later. First, I'm going to take you to Christmas in Dublin, 1998. And it was my last day at work, the day before Christmas Eve. And it was indeed with a Herculean effort that I dragged myself into work that day. And for anybody who has come hungover to work, you will know exactly what I mean. Because as I inched my way up our grand corporate swanky office staircase, each step was indeed a small victory. So feeling in such rag order, I made a beeline straight for our office kitchen. And there in the kitchen, lo and behold, was my dear colleague, Sinead. She was there touching up her lipstick and our shining silver tear and hadn't actually noticed me come in and gave it a little start. Ah, Mary, oh, geez. Oh, Jesus. Look at the state of you. Now, don't need to ask if you were out last night, she said, wrinkling her nose and gingerly stepping back. Now, it is useful at this point to give you a little bit of context to Sinead and I, because as colleagues, we were total polarities. You see, Sinead was every day, Sinead would dedicate herself to the altar of perfection. She was scented, coiffured, manicured. And with each day, Sinead saw as an absolute challenge, because with sucked in scruples and a huge array of eye-wateringly expensive designer push-up bras, Sinead was en route to world domination. You see, I could imagine Sinead every day getting up in the morning, looking at herself in the mirror and going, Sinead, you are winning at life. As for me, Sinead considered me a total oddity, quirky with a somewhat cavalier attitude to corporate affairs. And she had also once helpfully confided in me that she found my friends a rather dubious social circle, and I should really up my game in that department. Thanks, Sinead. But she was also totally perplexed that I was absolutely brilliant at my job, and in fact, one of the few colleagues she could implicitly trust. So we were living proof indeed that opposites really do attract. So go on, tell us, Mary, what'd you do? What'd you get up to last night? Now, it is here that I made the fatal mistake and told Sinead exactly what I got up to the night before. She stood there, mouth agape, then kind of became a little bit rigid with growing anger, and I certainly was not prepared for her reaction. Then she let loose. Jesus Christ, Mary, I can't believe you. I really can't believe you. You are infuriated. Is he still back at your flat? Seriously, is he still there? Maybe. I don't know, perhaps. God, I swear to God. Listen, do you know what, Mary? I don't care what you crowd get up to in Belfast, but you got to learn this. You just cannot do that type of thing in Dublin. Do you hear me? I can't even think of what else to say. Do you know what you are this morning? Let me tell you what you are this morning. What's that naughty word you told me? Oh, come on. What is it? Hallion, Sinead. But genuinely, I really don't think Hallion applies to me in this case. It was too late. Sinead had flounced out of the kitchen in total anger. I then slowly clockworked my way downstairs to the desk Sinead and I both shared. This was going to be a long morning. 5 minutes later, I shot Sinead a cautionary look to see, do a bit of a temperature check. She was there, phone under her arm, angrily punching in a number, slammed the receiver down. She was still fizzing. She then leaned across the desk and hissed at me, right, do you know what? See if we get our work break, we are going to back to your flat and see what the damage is done. Honestly, Mary, you really are going to learn from these escapades of yours if it's the last thing I do. So let me bring you back to my discovery of that evening, that indeed not all good deeds for others are appreciated. And let me tell you exactly what I told Sinead of what we had got up to the night before. So it had all been a very civil affair, actually, because I'd met my then husband, Paul, and our flatmate, Roberta, who was flying back to Italy the next day. So we were having, a few celebratory Christmas drinks to wish each other well for the holidays. And it hadn't been a late one, but I do remember that evening vividly because it was so cold. The pavements were glacial, the wind was piercing, and we left the pub early in the vain hope of getting a taxi. So as we skidded and slid along Nassau Street, we just stopped and decided just to wait there and flag down the next taxi that came. But while we were waiting there, we heard a voice behind us coming from a darkened doorway. And it was a man, middle-aged man, asking us for a light. So while we were waiting, we chatted to him for a few minutes, and he was very polite. And then, lo and behold, a taxi appeared, that lovely, warm, welcoming yellow glow of a free cab. And it's here, actually, that the three of us stood at the door of the cab and had one of those moments of intuition. One of those moments in life you just don't think. And as the three of us looked at each other, we didn't say a word, but we knew exactly what we had to do. So we called the man in the doorway to jump into the taxi with us and come home. And I have to say, back in the warmth of our flat, Thomas was the name of the man we had brought home. Thomas, Roberta, Paul, and we had the best evenings crack, chatting and putting the world to rights. And he was so polite, so witty, so warm and engaging. Just one of those people you meet and just go, you really are a beautiful human being. So the next morning, we were all getting up early, and Roberta had her flight to catch. The rest of us had to go to work. So I gently tapped Thomas on the shoulder before we left, as he was sleeping on our sofa, and told him to help himself to anything and make breakfast. And I went to work. I didn't even give it a second thought. It was the most natural thing in the world to do. Just that, again, that feeling of intuition. But Sinead, however, was belligerently unconvinced in our faith in humanity. So it was a very silent and bristling car journey back to my flat on our work break. Sinead got out of the car, slammed the door, and I followed behind her, listening to her angry heels clack across the foyer of our apartment. Right, Mary, give me the key. Now, this is, and I'm telling you this is going to be a moment of life learning, she said. So I handed Sinead the key, stood behind her as she opened the doorway with a look of consternation in her face. So it was the second time that morning that Sinead's mouth dropped agape. And I have to say, I was as wilting as I was behind her. I too went into a state of shock because I genuinely had never seen the flat in that state. Because you see, every surface, every tile, every shelf was gleaming. Thomas had cleaned our flat from top to toe, and he had even taken the flowers Roberta, our flatmate, had got from her colleagues and beautifully arranged them in a vase. And leaning against that vase was a tiny piece of paper, a note, with our three names written on it in really small, neat handwriting. And I motioned to Sinead to open and read the note. And as she stood there with the note in her hands, tears silently rolled down her face. She couldn't stop. Because I like to think that morning, I gave Sinead the best gift that I could give anyone. And I was teaching someone about the gift of intuition. Because as I said, intuition is knowing without knowing. And as we all know, whenever you receive that gift of intuition, when somebody trusts you, well, that's just simply priceless. So thank you and happy Christmas.
Oh, thank you so much. I love that story. Amazing. Did you ever see him again?
I did, and that's another 10 by 9 story.
Oh, wow. Oh, fantastic. Don't even give us a hint.
So
So, oh, brilliant. I look forward to it.